How old were you when you saw your first Klan march?
I must have been, it wasn't until we moved to Coweta County, and that was Noonan and Grantville, Georgia. I must have been about eight or 10 years old. And it was not an uncommon thing to see them. You know, they would have them in these small towns. And Grantville was a small town of about 2,500 people. And so I was able to witness Klan marches there. Later, my dad was appointed to Griffin, Georgia, and we saw Klan marches in Griffin, Georgia.
Daytime, nighttime?
Usually daytime. Nighttime was too tricky, even for the Klan, you know, to be out there in the dark. So usually it was during the day.
And what would you do? Do you remember any of your feelings around the first time you saw people actually walking down the street in hoods?
Yeah. After being told, you know, and we were told fairly early, you know, what that means, we generally just retired, went home, you know, and stayed out of sight. Now, I lived long enough to see young black children watching the march and pointing fingers and saying some gosh awful things about the Klanspeople.
and not being lynched.
And not being lynched. Yeah.
Did you ever witness a lynching?
No, I didn't.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
But as a child, do you recall being afraid? Do you recall what your parents told you to do as a young black boy? Were there any particular instructions that they gave to you to help you cope?
Always. There are things that you avoided, things that you did not do, especially around certain people, people who are Caucasian or white, and you learned very early about those things. My dad is one of my heroes, and he was clear about the social meanings of religion and the social situation in which black folks lived during those segregated years, in particular. When we were in Griffin, Georgia, he was one of the organizers of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the chapter in Griffin, Georgia. After which time he received a threat, you know, you better be out of town, you know, and if you don't go, you're in trouble. His response to that, having been reared in a family where guns were commonly present, was to say, well, I'm going to tote my 38 for a while, and he did for several years. He never had an incident that I know about.
Were you afraid?
Yeah, we were afraid during those times, and there were times when after a certain threat or what have you, when someone would stay at the house, you know, to join him just in case, you know, we had some kind of incident. We were frightened as children. And of course, I lived long enough during the time that I was pastoring in Iowa to receive threats myself.